My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. I grew up in a small, quiet town with my older sister, Emily, who is 5 years older than me. Emily was much more than a sibling to me. She was like a second mother. She looked out for me in every way, from helping me with my schoolwork to giving me advice on friendships and life. She was my rock, the person I trusted most, and the one who made me feel safe no matter what. Growing up, Emily always seemed to know exactly what to say to comfort me, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. 3 years ago, I met Mark, and my world changed. He was everything I had ever hoped for in a partner: kind, funny, attentive, and thoughtful. Mark had a way of making me feel special, like I was the most important person in the world. He brought me flowers just because, made me laugh when I needed it most, and constantly reminded me how much he cared. I fell in love with him quickly, and soon we began talking about a future together. Mark felt like the missing piece in my life, and I often shared my excitement about him with Emily. She was genuinely happy for me and would always say, "You found a good man, Sarah." Her words reassured me that my happiness with Mark was real. The three of us grew close over time. Emily would often come over for dinner, and we'd spend hours laughing and talking. Those evenings felt perfect, as if I had the best of both worlds, a loving boyfriend and a sister who was also my best friend. I loved seeing how well Mark and Emily got along, and I never questioned the bond we all shared. Life seemed to have fallen into place perfectly. Over the past few months, though, things started to feel different. Mark became distant. He no longer responded to my texts as quickly, and when we were together, he seemed distracted, his mind elsewhere. Whenever I asked him what was wrong, he would brush it off, saying, "I'm just tired." At the same time, Emily also began to pull away. She canceled our weekly coffee dates, always claiming she was too busy. I tried not to overthink it, pushing aside the uneasy feeling in my chest. I convinced myself that they were both just going through their own struggles and that everything would go back to normal. One evening, I decided to surprise Mark with dinner at his apartment. I thought a kind gesture might rekindle the warmth between us. I spent time picking out his favorite food, imagining how happy he'd be when I showed up. As I walked up the stairs to his apartment, I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. I wanted everything to feel the way it used to. When I reached his door, I noticed something unusual. It was slightly open. My heart skipped a beat. Mark was always careful about locking his door. Had he forgotten? I hesitated for a moment before gently pushing the door open and stepping inside. The apartment was quiet, but I could hear faint voices coming from the living room. I froze as the sound became clearer. One voice was Mark's, but the other voice, it was unmistakably Emily's. My heart started to race. Why was Emily here? What were they doing? I walked toward the living room slowly, my footsteps barely making a sound. The closer I got, the clearer the voices became. They were laughing. The sound pierced through me like a knife. My chest tightened with a feeling I couldn't yet define: fear, anger, or maybe both. When I turned the corner, I saw them. Mark and Emily were sitting on the couch, close together. His hand rested casually on her knee, and they were smiling at each other. The scene hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air out of my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't move. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. Why were they sitting so close? Why did they look so comfortable with each other? Emily noticed me first. Her smile disappeared instantly, and her face turned pale. Mark, startled, quickly stood up, his eyes wide with panic. "Sarah, it's not what it looks like," he said, his voice shaky and desperate. I couldn't respond. My hands trembled, and the bag of food I had been holding slipped from my grip, landing with a dull thud on the floor. Tears filled my eyes, blurring my vision as I turned and ran out of the apartment. I ignored their voices calling after me, begging me to stop. Outside, the cold night air hit my face, but it did nothing to ease the pain coursing through me. My heart felt like it had been ripped apart, shattered by the betrayal of the two people I trusted most. By the time I got home, I was barely holding myself together. I went straight to my room and locked the door, collapsing onto my bed. My legs felt weak, and my chest was tight, as if I could hardly breathe. I stared at the ceiling, tears streaming down my face, but I didn't bother to wipe them away. I felt numb, broken. Images of what I had seen kept replaying in my mind. Mark's hand on Emily's knee, their shared laughter, the guilty looks on their faces when they saw me. My thoughts spiraled into an endless cycle of questions. How long had this been going on? Had I been blind to the signs? Was I not enough for Mark? And Emily, how could she do this to me? She was my sister, my confidant. Did she ever think about how much her actions would hurt me? The more I thought about the past few months, the clearer the picture became. Mark's distance, the way he avoided my questions, and how he seemed glued to his phone. Emily's canceled plans, her sudden busyness, it all made sense now. All the little things I had ignored were glaringly obvious in hindsight. The truth was undeniable, and the weight of it crushed me. My world had fallen apart, and I didn't know if I could ever piece it back together, urging me to pour my heart out. When I finished, there was a pause, and then she said, "Sarah, you need to talk to them. You deserve answers. Don't let this uncertainty destroy you." Her words stayed with me long after the call ended. I knew she was right, but the thought of confronting them was terrifying. What if their answers confirmed my worst fears? What if I wasn't strong enough to handle the truth? I felt trapped, but deep down, I knew I couldn't keep living with the questions tearing me apart. The next morning, I woke up feeling emotionally drained, but my decision was clear. I couldn't go on like this. I needed to know what was happening, no matter how much it might hurt. Gathering every ounce of courage I had, I called Mark and Emily. My voice was cold and distant as I asked them to meet me at a cafe. I didn't give them time to explain or make excuses. When I arrived at the cafe, my hands were trembling. I sat at a corner table, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited. When they finally walked in, I noticed how tense they both looked. Emily's face was pale, and she avoided looking at me. Mark's jaw was clenched, and his shoulders were stiff. The tension between us was suffocating as they sat down across from me. No one spoke at first. The silence was unbearable, so I broke it. My voice shook as I said, "I need you both to tell me the truth. What's going on between you two?" Emily glanced at Mark before speaking. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. It's not what you think." Mark quickly added, his tone desperate, "We weren't trying to hurt you. I promise, Sarah. You've got it all wrong." Their words only fueled the anger and confusion boiling inside me. Leaning forward, I demanded, "Then explain. Why were you two so close? Why were you laughing like that? And why didn't you tell me Emily was at your apartment? My voice cracked as tears threatened to spill. Mark hesitated, his eyes filled with guilt. Then he finally said, I asked Emily to help me plan a surprise for you. Your birthday is coming up, and I wanted it to be special. That's all, Sarah. Emily nodded quickly, her voice trembling as she added, We didn't mean to keep it from you. We just wanted it to be perfect. I know how it must have looked, but I'd never hurt you like that. Their explanations hung in the air, leaving me torn. Part of me wanted to believe them. Another part felt shattered by the secrecy that had already done so much damage. Shaking my head, I said, You didn't think about how this would make me feel. You broke my trust. Both of you. Mark reached across the table, his hand hovering over mine, but I pulled away. I'll do anything to fix this, he said softly. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears as she stammered, I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah. Please forgive me. My legs felt weak, but I stood up, steadying myself. My voice was firm, though I could feel the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. I need time to think, I said before turning and walking out, leaving them in stunned silence. The days that followed were some of the hardest I'd ever endured. Their words echoed in my mind over and over again. Asterisk, it's not what you think. We didn't mean to hurt you, asterisk. I wanted so badly to believe them, but every time I thought about what I'd seen, the pain resurfaced. I avoided their calls and texts, withdrawing into myself. At night, I cried until I was too exhausted to stay awake, haunted by the thought that I might never be able to trust them again. As time passed, I began to understand something crucial. Holding on to anger and pain wasn't punishing them, it was punishing me. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing had happened. It meant freeing myself from the weight that was suffocating me. After a week of reflection, I decided to meet with them again. This time, I felt calmer, more in control of my emotions. When we sat down, I looked them both in the eyes and said, I've decided to forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean I've forgotten. Rebuilding my trust will take time. Emily broke into tears, her voice thick with emotion as she said, Thank you, Sarah. I promise I'll never hurt you like this again. Mark nodded solemnly, his voice steady as he said, I'll do whatever it takes to prove you can trust me again. From that moment on, I began focusing on myself. I reconnected with friends, took up painting, and started going for long, peaceful walks in the park. Little by little, I felt the weight lifting. Forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me. Letting go of the pain allowed me to heal and find peace. It was a hard lesson, but one that showed me the strength I didn't know I had. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Echoes of Reality.